Who's ready, Bills Mafia? It's the Bills Squad, sponsored by Game Time. Everything Buffalo Bills, every week. Breaking down the big hits and game-changing plays the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So gear up and squad up. The Bills Squad show starts now.
And hello, welcome in. This is the Bill Squad Show. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, and Jerry Ostrowski as we get ready to chat Bills with you for another hour. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet, and it wins. Lots to get to today, including wrapping up what both Joe Brady and Bobby Babich had to say at OTAs. The Bills will wrap this round of OTAs and then get to mandatory minicamp, which means the James Cook watch will take its next step. Does he show up? We'll get you some predictions and how that might play out. We're also going to spend some time digging into everybody eats because Joe Brady addressed it again. Bobby Babich's plan for this new look defense. Lots and lots to get to as we roll through this hour of conversation with you. So without further ado, and also a comment section as well. So bring us your comments, your questions, right along with the chat, and we'll get our final segment answering some of your questions, you know, the issues that you want to hear brought up and addressed from me, Joe, and Jerry. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Welcome. Thanks for having us.
Good. It's starting to feel normal, right? I mean, like part of the routine. We've been doing this since was the week of the draft we started.
Yeah.
And so I feel it's like a normal part of my week now. I'm loving it.
And we're getting to, training camp it'll sneak up on us. Like we're going to be here Mondays and Thursdays until then. And then once we get to camp, like it's just going to be all out. Here we go. One thing I was wondering about your thoughts on this, Bobby Babich and Joe Brady, the two coordinators spoke earlier this week, and they're entering the season with different directives. For Joe Brady, it's do it again, right? The offense was great. Do it again. Got you some reinforcements. Do it again. And for Bobby Babich, under Sean McDermott, in whichever way some people like to view it, it's all right, put it all together. It's time for the defense to come together. So let's start with Babich because he's on the job. I think he's pretty well liked. I think Bills fans love his energy. He's a high energy guy. If you go to training camp, you can't miss him. You can't miss hearing him on the field. He's all over the place. So how does this project kind of start, putting this all together from Bobby Babich's standpoint? Because he's got a lot of new faces, and it's his second year as the defensive coordinator. So pressure come with that, expectations, how high should expectations be for Babich in this defense?
Well, I think they should be pretty high. This team has committed a lot this offseason to the defense, and it's not just the free agents of Hoyt and Ogunjobi and Bosa or 5 consecutive draft picks to start the draft. It's the coaching talent as well. Ryan Nielsen, Jason Raprovich, Mike Pellegrino. That's significant in terms of coaching influx. And we've heard Brandon Beane say, it's the defense, right? He come out and said it's the defense that's been the problem. And so to me, it's a clear message based on the actions, both personnel and coaching from the general manager, that this defense has to perform at a higher level. And it's interesting because Sean McDermott and, of course, we just listened to Bobby Babich. They both were been asked about that. And I'm thinking a lot about Sean McDermott with Matt Perino on the Shout podcast a couple of weeks ago. And Matt was pretty direct with the questioning on the defense and, some of the shortcomings in the postseason. And Sean McDermott's first response to that was to talk about the non-playoff elimination games and how important the defense was, and also being mindful of the success. And then Bobby Babich, same type of thing. He's like, I don't want to lose sight of the success that we've had as well. So they're trying to work in some positive reinforcement here, but I think it's firmly under fire. I give Bobby Babich some grace for year one because he was a rookie coordinator. And the more you think about it, just kind of some challenging circumstances where obviously a lot of transition away from veterans. But I mean, before you could get to week 2, Milano's out, Bernard's out, Taron Johnson's out, Von Miller suspension comes through. The only 2 starters that didn't miss at least one game due to injury was Daquan Jones and Greg Rousseau. I mean, Rapp and Hamlin miss a bunch of time. The safeties are hurt all throughout training camp. Rasul Douglas, regression happens, right? Like, there was a lot of things there that were difficult for a rookie coordinator. I do celebrate the takeaways. I mean, that was a big deal that stayed the same. They were very good efficiency team in terms of defending the run, but third downs, pass rush, covering, not where it needs to be. And I think he's got the most pressure this year.
I think the biggest thing for me, anyway, is looking at this thing, and we know that they put a ton of resources into the defensive side of the football. If it was just status quo as far as the coaching side of it, I wouldn't be as excited because you've got all these new pieces coming in, and then you look back at what has happened recently. And while they've had some areas of high success, we talk about takeaways and those types of things, did a decent job against the run. But when you look at stuff, if you bring new players in and you want to truly make change, you've got to bring more eyes in on the coaching side of this thing. And I think that the Nelson signing was huge, bringing him in. Rabrovich, who had been here before, who's a Western New York guy, having him come in, new DB coaches. There's a whole new set of eyes that have come into the building. And I think that is big. I mean, Babich talked about the D-line situation, and he mirrored it to the DBs. He said the defensive backs have had 3 coaches in those areas for a long time. And now we've got 3 guys coaching up front. And that's a good thing. You know, you got inside guys, outside guys, you can break it up. And then you also got intricacies like the pass rush and how specific that skill set is. Bring a guy like Rabrovich in, and then you got Nelson, of course, who's kind of taking things over. To me, anyway, that's the most exciting part because they know, they're like, look, we've been good, but we've got to get a lot better. And maybe our ideas, maybe we're maxed out a little bit. Maybe what we do, we need some fresh ideas to come in and mesh that with what we do in this 4-2-5. To me, anyway, that's the biggest deal. And it shows a lack of being, you know, for lack of better terms, hard-headed. For a long time, you know, those guys have been maybe guilty of being a little hard-headed, set in their ways, you know, playing off coverage, giving guys easy completions, go 13, 14 plays. You'll make a mistake. And they've realized that maybe we got to change some stuff up. Maybe we got to force the issue a little bit more on defense. And to me, these coaches they brought in are going to do that. And that's what's got me excited because it's showing me anyway that status quo is not good enough. We got to get some new stuff in this building, and they've done that.
One thing I wonder about Babich, and, you know, you guys would know how this works where the offense, the coach has a defensive background. Does his coordinator ever get credit for that? Like, think about what's happened since Sean McDermott's come here. We've seen Brian Daboll leave for a head coaching job. We might see Joe Brady leave for a coaching job. And as good as this defense has been for this many years, the coaching tree has not spawned off of that. Sometimes that will happen. Will Babich get credit, or is it McDermott? Because when if the defense is terrible, I know how it's going to sound on WGR. It's going to be McDermott. And when Leslie Frazier had the job, McDermott did take over play calling duties for a little bit of time there, right? And sometimes we've learned along the way he takes it over. So I guess I wonder how you guys separate McDermott from his coordinators. I know that he's the head coach, but Joe, Jerry, you know, they score 50 points in a game. People act like McDermott's a bystander there, and they might not be fully wrong. Mm-hmm. So how do you separate Babich from McDermott? How can you do it when you watch them in a year? This year, how will you do it if you even can?
To me, I don't think you can. I mean, BBJ is a disciple of the McDermott bloodline, right? I mean, this is a guy that was groomed from a analyst position to an assistant to a full-time position coach to now the defense coordinator within and all under Sean McDermott, coached with his father with Sean McDermott. So he's in that bloodline. So I think if this defense fails, sure. I mean, all eyes kind of point to Sean McDermott because, to me anyway, even with some of the little wrinkles and stuff that Babich has done, this is McDermott's deal. This is what he's coached and Babich has learned under him. Now, if the new D coordinator was, say, Rex Ryan or somebody like that who comes in and is his own entity, right? I mean, you see a lot of teams. There's a head coach. But really, there's 3 teams within one team. There's the head coach, the O coordinator's running his deal, D coordinator's running his deal, and there's a lot of separation. If it was a Rex Ryan or somebody like that, yeah, you could go ahead and put a lot of critique onto Rex Ryan and basically blame him if the defense doesn't produce. This is a hand-picked successor through the McDermott bloodline, so I think it's hard to separate the two. It really is. That's why, to me anyway, and I talked about it earlier in the earlier segment, Nelson, Rabrovich, those guys coming in show that we've got to get a little bit of outside theory to what we're doing to help us get where we want to be.
Almost to answer this question, I want to go back to Leslie Frazier, and I don't disagree with Jerry in that it's hard to, or you can't separate Babich from McDermott, because Babich is a disciple. And even when he spoke this past week, he talked about a Sean McDermott defense and some of the fundamentals of it. But when I think about the defense called by Leslie Frazier, the 1 year that we had of McDermott, and then last year with Bobby Babich, I do see very different tendencies in those units. And I would say the off man, make them go 10, 15 plays to score was very much a Leslie Frazier thing. When I go to the 2023 defense that was coordinated and called by Sean McDermott, I was almost annoyed by how aggressive it was at times. And I remember that Bengals game thinking to myself, like, you want to force the issue, but that doesn't mean you can leave Micah Hyde one-on-one with T. Higgins down the field. Like, that's not going to work. Where I thought like he did want to force that issue, and it blew up on him a little bit. And then last year, I thought like it was a bit of an in-between where the stunts declined, the blitzing. I mean, you remember Terrell Bernard had 6.5 sacks under Sean McDermott. The guy barely blitzed under Bobby Babich. So I think that there was some fundamental differences. I don't know how much of that is year to year and personnel. The dime defense staying last year, was definitely interesting. They're playing that almost 20% of snaps. And in certain games, it's very much a part of the menu where they even had a new dime package where it was, of course, you have 3 down linemen, but like then there would sometimes be, they would only have 1 backer, of course, but then sometimes they would go 4 down linemen with 1 backer and then the extra defensive back. So like there were some structural differences. You've seen simulated pressures ramp up mostly under McDermott, but a little less under Babich. So I think they have their own wrinkles. I think at its core, it's the same, but I do feel like there's been some tangible differences in watching this defense now under 3 different play callers.
I kind of I'm trying to figure out how to say this and make it sound the way I want to, so it's clear. It's funny defensively. A lot of times when you don't feel you have good enough personnel, you go over the top blitzing and things like that. You try to force the issue to get the big play because you don't think you're good enough. And then also you can do the same thing with playing off and playing soft and all of that, thinking, just let's not give up the big play. So to me anyway, it's almost like they were constantly grasping for straws to try to find a way to be successful over there because maybe personnel-wise they weren't quite good enough. Now the personnel's getting better. Maybe we'll see a more rounded front as far as, aggression in the blitz game and playing on those types of things. So it'll be interesting to me anyway, because while a lot of this talent, we've got to wait on some of it with suspensions and a lot of it is rookies. So we got to wait on them to develop. I do think it's a much more talented group than we've had in quite a while. So it'll be interesting to see how they fit that either off or aggression together to get this group up to speed. So it's kind of weird. I know that that might be confusing to some, but it seems to me anyway, defensively, if you don't think you're good enough, you just run like banshees, bring everybody, try to get the big play, or you go the opposite way, which is real conservative.
Well, and I think all of this is tied to the front. When McDermott tells you it starts up front, believe him, because the entire concept of what they want to do defensively is based on being able to get organic pressure with 4, and they got to be able to get home. And I think about last year, and I think it was Taron Johnson's worst year in coverage. And by structure, this defense wants to funnel a lot of opportunities at Taron Johnson because of how they leverage with their spacing. And of course, they're reliant on the pressure to get home. And I don't think that happened well enough. And Taron Johnson was put in some very difficult spots where, he in the slot, you get 2-way goes from these slot receivers. And if Taron didn't guess right, a lot of times it didn't work out because the pressure wasn't good enough. So it all goes hand in hand, but I do think that the upgrades to the front really unlock the way that they want to space the field with their back 7.
One thing on Babich I heard from OTAs that was kind of exciting to me, what he said about Michael Hoyt. And this probably happens a lot in the league where you're a coach and you just admire a player, you like his skill set. The Bills added Michael Hoyt really early in free agency, and of course that suspension will keep him out for 6 games. So, we'll see training camp and all that, but then we have to wait. He said about Michael Hoyt, he'd looked at him for multiple years and tried to envision how he could be used, like what kind of role he would be in, which, I find that kind of exciting just because as they go to free agency and they're thinking about the pieces that they want, I wonder how much they would ask their offensive coordinator, like, hey, we like our pro personnel department likes this player. What do you think? Oh, man, I've been thinking about him for years, how I could use him. So we're going to get a chance to see that. One of the Bills' biggest moves this offseason is someone the coordinator's been thinking about for a while.
We've seen this like some Emmanuel Sanders was a player. The Bills were after Stephon Diggs. Michael Hoyt is a UDFA that had some like restricted free agency and it was actually on the practice squad at one point. They probably had some attention on him, and hopefully they got the right plan because I think he can really help this defense in particular against these types of offense that want to play condensed sets with multiple tight ends, multiple backs, like big people. I think he's such an important like neutralizer to some of that, particularly against Baltimore. And of course he's going to miss the Baltimore game, which is not great, but maybe he'll be around when the teams inevitably meet up in the playoffs, because I think he's that type of X factor for your front that's going to help you counter some of those looks.
Right, exactly. I think as much as he can bring benefits to the defense with his size to be able to hop into more of a bigger set type look, I think you're going to see him do a lot of, probably dropping too. I mean, I think he can do some things in pass coverage and take away some of those small windows quickly to take away some of the quick throws. It's kind of like what Joe Brady talked about. It's funny you say Babich talked about Hoyt that way. Joe Brady talked about who's our guy from San Diego? I'm sorry, I slipped my
Josh
mind.
Palmer.
Yeah, Palmer the same way. He talked about Palmer. This is a guy I've loved since the draft. I've looked at him. I think he does great stuff. He's coming in, and they're like, well, how's the development of Josh Palmer? They're like, he showed up, and he's right where he needs to be. He's doing all the things we want. So I think that offensively, you have that same type of thing with Palmer that you do with Hoyt on the defense. So I think both additions will be good for us, especially when we get the one back in 6 to 7 weeks.
Yeah, be tough waiting for him to come back, and
Right.
Larry Ogunjobi as well. Let's dig into the offensive coordinator when we return. Joe Brady addressed Everybody Eats. Joe, no shirt this week, so the Everybody Eats shirt, maybe it's in the wash, maybe next week. Joe Brady with the latest on Everybody Eats coming up next here on the Bill Squad Show. And Bill Squad brought to you by FanDuel. NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So if you like the Pacers to pull the big upset, they're not being given a great chance to win in this series, or OKC to run roughshod in 4 or 5 games, you've got those. Which players are showing up in big moments? You can bet live, and you can get a $200 bonus in bets as an added bit to your excitement with your first $5 bet when it hits. So if you got a read on who's heating up, back it up with a same-game parlay, a live same-game parlay. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back on the Bill Squad Show, Jeremy White, Joe Marino, and Jerry Ostrowski as we dig through some comments made by Joe Brady, the Bills offensive coordinator. He was asked about Everybody Eats, which has been maybe the most uttered phrase about the Bills offense in decades, like going back to, I don't know what, like the K-gun. Everyone has a take on Everybody Eats. And he said this, guys. He said, Everybody Eats has nothing to do with production. It's all about a selfless mindset and helping and celebrating each other. And that's great. Like I there are lots of teams that want to spread the ball, and the Bills have done that exceedingly well. They did it with Brian Daboll. But the Everybody Eats thing last year felt like a not exactly personal thing about Stephon Diggs, but a direct rebuttal to what they used to be. And now, you guys tell me if I'm nuts. I felt like the way he said that was a little bit of a let's not make it more than it is kind of moment from him. I thought, not like distancing himself from Everybody Eats, but just hold on a second here, like we value who we have, and we think we've got some good players, and the guys that are good are going to earn it.
It's funny you bring this up because we talked about this last night, Joe. Everybody eats when you look at this concept, and this is how I look at it. Everybody eats because you haven't had one or two guys step to the forefront to take away the majority of what's at the table. I mean, is that kind of what we're looking at? I mean, it's a great moniker. Everybody eats. We distribute the ball. That's fine. But in Buffalo's case, do you think of a Josh Palmer or Elijah Moore or Keon Coleman all of a sudden move to the forefront? All of a sudden, we're not talking about everybody eats. I mean, I kind of liken it to this. I'm an O-line guy, so we're all about analogies. They bring things to analogies to us to help us out. So you guys ever have dogs that have puppies?
I
You ever watch a bunch of puppies with their mom and they're all eating?
Yeah.
And then there's, everybody's getting some, right? But then there's always that one puppy that's the tank that comes up and he shoulders himself in and knocks about 2 or 3 of them out of the way and takes over. Yeah, everybody eats until the big dog shows up, right? And I think that's kind of how we're looking at it this way. It's a great marketing slogan. And yes, it does work. I get what we're saying, all right? And I'm not being critical. I'm just saying that everybody eats until somebody walks through the door that commands more than the rest. And I think that's what we're waiting on right now in Buffalo. They're not going to force it by bringing in a Diggs-type player and saying, okay, he's going to get 57%, 60% of the targets. But if one of these guys moves to the forefront, I don't think Joe Brady on a Monday when he's game planning for the Patriots is going to go, hey, guys, look, we've thrown the ball to Josh Palmer 52% of the time. We got to drop that down. We're going to move him out of the game plan a little bit. I know he's been productive, but we got to make sure everybody gets their touches. I don't see it that way. To me, everybody eats is great until somebody moves to the forefront and starts knocking other people out of the way, and then you're going to see things a little differently. That's how I look at it.
Well, I think the way Joe Brady answered the question speaks to your take, Jerry, where it's not about the production or percentage of market share within targets. About, hey, it's about getting the right people involved and not necessarily caring about how much or how little each individual piece gets, as long as it leads to good offense, scoring points, and winning games. And so I think he almost like protected himself against the possibility of what you're saying happening. Like the Bills could have somebody step up and command 120 targets. Like that's possible. And then it's not necessarily everybody eats because everyone gets a little bit of the plate. It's, well, really, how does Josh Allen want to distribute the football? Right. And I thought you made a good point last night when we talked about this, in that, Josh Allen is a visual type player, right? He's not necessarily a, hit your back foot, read it and rip it type guy, right? He wants to play with a little bit more of a visual component. And this kind of works for him to have the freedom to just run the play and be instinctive and be the playmaker that you are, as opposed to, hey, number 14's over here. We got to make sure we dial up 15 different plays that have him as the number one option on the play, and you got to make sure it happens. I think it's just embracing post Diggs life and leaning into the overall instinctive nature of Josh Allen. And if somebody emerges as a guy that he wants to throw the ball to 120 times, then great. But it's really all about Josh Allen.
And that
go ahead.
I was going to say that might have been Shakir last year, and Shakir might see more of that. He might earn more this year, and maybe Coleman earns more. One of the things that I always felt like everybody eats was always going to run up against. Not it wouldn't succeed, but what are two of the big storylines from the GM himself? Kincaid proving that he can be what he was drafted to be, the coach and the GM talking about Keon Coleman. And it doesn't mean you force the ball to these guys, of course, in the interest of everybody eating. But, I mean, you draft a player with the first-round pick. If you're the GM, you're looking for that guy to get his. I mean, it's not just Kincaid that would want the ball to Kincaid. I would think Brandon Beane would too. Like, let's see him at his best. Let's see Keon Coleman at his best. And Josh Palmer's a signing of mine. Like, when you're the GM that brings all these guys in, I know it's one big team, one goal, all that, but you'd still have these micro investments emotionally, Jerry. I feel like I drafted that guy. I think he's darn good. And my coordinator, like, let's hope he's getting him the ball a little bit. I know he's not playing fantasy football, but he's got an investment in Kincaid. He's got an investment in Coleman, and seeing those guys reach their peak would matter to Bean and would matter to the Bills.
Right. I think that also, I mean, this everybody eats thing comes down to this. We're not going to game plan to force the ball to one player. If you want to eat and get your touches, go get open. That's kind of how it goes. And I think you're right. I mean, you look at Shakir and Kincaid and all those guys. Yeah, they want them to succeed. Obviously, they moved up in the draft to get Kincaid. They've given Shakir an extension. Shakir has proven himself to be a guy that's highly productive, and you want your guys to do those things. But don't kid yourself. I mean, Joe Brady tells us every week. We've talked about this before on the show. Every week, there's only one thing that's important to him. 1-0.
One more point.
1-0.
Yep.
1-0. You see it every week. So he's ever since he's taken that spot, 1-0. And so I think that's kind of how this all works together. It's not about forcing the ball to a wide receiver one every game. It's about one thing and one thing only. Production makes you win. Win is 1-0, and we move down the road. So, I think that we've kind of skewed, and maybe we can kind of take that everybody eats moniker and mold it how we want it to help our argument. But I do, what we've talked about here, I do think it's that. It's basically let's do this, and who emerges.
Jerry, can you put Ralph Wilson's comment up? Because I think this is worth our attention. Ralph Wilson in the YouTube comments says, everybody eats means nobody gets paid. Can't get the numbers that demands the big bucks. Bean loves the mantra. And I think there's some truth to what he's saying here. I think I've caused a bit of a stir with my target distribution stuff, and that's good. I wanted to have good conversations about it, but a lot of the feedback that I got was, it's just not enough for certain players. The Bills they have contracts in Palmer and contracts in Curtis Samuel and Elijah Moore, which prompted me to do a little bit of math, which is always a little dangerous, but I can assure you that this checks out. If you were to take the APY of Curtis Samuel, Josh Palmer, and Elijah Moore, it would be the equal combined of the 21st highest paid receiver in the NFL. It does, that might be a little bit of a sarcasm, tongue-in-cheek comment, but there is some truth to this, because the best receivers are getting paid $40 million a year. You can have three of them for half of that. And Rashad Bateman's new deal with Baltimore, it's bringing up this. There's a middle class of wide receiver that is finally existing in the NFL. And it can't be this thing where you get this amazing player and all of a sudden it's, you'd love to have Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, but you're going to pay that guy $40 million. There's going to be some receiving cores that are $30 million combined, and they're probably good passing offenses. So there is an economic conversation to be had about everybody eats and what that means.
I'll agree. I want to throw another number at you here, because there's definitely some savings to not ever pay the big guy. But this kind of goes back to the dust up that I had Brandon Bean on WGR a long time ago. Drafting them is the true economic way to do it. Like, my favorite stat going in is if Elijah Moore hits his bonuses and gets $5 million this year, there's $5 million, then Matthew Golden would make less than every Bills receiver that's under contract that's not Keon Coleman. I mean, every single Packer receiver would make less than every Bills receiver. There's a much cheaper way to do it in the draft. I'm not saying the Bills can't win, of course. Like, I like their receivers more than last year, but the idea that what Ralph Wilson's comment here is that nobody gets paid. I'd like to take it a slightly different angle, Jerry, and that's this. I'm not trying to be cynical, but if everybody eats and nobody gets paid, there's also a little dose of who's actually accountable for success. Because after that playoff game, when they lose to Kansas City and it's a throw to Amari Cooper and it's a Hail Mary kind of throw to Kincaid and he can't come up with that ball, like, people are upset about that. The thing that Diggs got was he dropped the ball and then it was like, he's got to go. He can't do it. And everybody eats. It's almost like I after a game have to say, who am I allowed to say, where were you today? Right? Am I allowed to do, if nobody rises to the level, like Josh Allen is under the gun and Von Miller, $120 million man, like with a contract comes expectation. And if you're just always talking about like, oh, everybody's just the same level player here, then who do I get to say, where were you today? And I feel like there's a little bit of accountability that, comes out with that elevated status.
Is that answer Josh Allen, the $330 million man?
Is he the only one?
You beat me to it.
He's the only, but that's part of my problem. Is he the only one that we would ever hold to? We needed you today, and you weren't there. Is anybody else left?
I mean, obviously, you could throw shade upon the offensive line if maybe they don't have a great day blocking and there's a bunch of pressure or we don't run the football. But it's kind of, it just shows to show you not only the fan base, just how much the administration relies on Josh Allen.
Yeah.
He is the answer to everything right now on offense to me. I mean, he is the answer to everything. He's that good, and he should be the answer to everything, but still. And Ralph brings up a great point. It's kind of what I was talking about, not in a disrespectful manner, but everybody eats is almost a marketing slogan. It really is. And look at Keon Coleman. You know, they draft Keon, they trade back in the second, they draft Keon. What was he known for? He was they just talked about his interviews and how he, work ethic, and he's a team guy, and he's not flashy, he's not this, he's frugal, all these different things that they use to describe Keon. And what is that? He fits right in with the moniker, right? Just like Shakir, just like Palmer, just like Moore. You got the same type of guys that aren't going to clamor for the football, guys that are going to be team guys that took team-friendly contracts. It's like a movement, man. And it's funny, Ralph, that's a great point. Ralph's a great listener. He brings up a lot of good points on a lot of different things. But yeah, that's really interesting. That's something.
Commenter Ralph Wilson Sr., not the actual late Ralph Wilson, but someone identifying that as on our YouTube chat. You can always jump in and make a comment. One last quick thought on this, Jerry. You're talking about guys that fit in. The true test would be, did you see, Malik Neighbors goes, is it 6th to the Giants when they draft him? Did you see the interview, Brian Daboll asking him what happens if it's the fourth quarter and you don't have any ball, haven't had the ball thrown your way? And Malik Neighbors says, I'm upset. And Daboll says, I like that. Now, some coaches aren't going to like that. Some quarterbacks aren't going to like that. And some coaches are going to say, I do want someone that is like that. So, you're always walking the line when you're trying to figure out talent versus how far will this player go to say, I have to be involved because I'm good enough to be involved. But Neighbors was flat out honest about it. If I'm not getting the ball, I'm going to be upset about it. And, in a pretty strong rookie campaign, we'll see where it goes from here.
But I also think, and you look at the numbers and everything, this is what works for Josh. This system works for Josh. We've seen the Diggs deal, and yes, Diggs had some good years early, then he started fading. But this system worked. How else could you justify Quentin Morris with 3 touchdowns in the NFL? Because Josh Allen extended plays, Quentin got open, he threw it to him. If anything, Gabe Davis should call Josh Allen and say, man, I appreciate you. You helped me get paid in Jacksonville because my ability for straight line speed and you ad-libbing and making plays and I get open and I know I had to catch it, but you went ahead and used my abilities the best they could and got me a contract in Jacksonville, because if we were relying on Gabe Davis to route run to get open, he's still not open. So it's like, yes, this system works, but there's a lot more to it than just this, kumbaya thing where we all come in and make s'mores and we're all happy. And, hey, I caught it 5 times yesterday. I think you should get – Josh, could you throw it to him because I got too many? It's not that. It's just the system that works for the quarterback we have. And it's awesome because, like Ralph said, it gives us a chance to not overpay at a position because we're paying the quarterback and everybody else the money we're paying them. So it's great for us.
Good stuff. It won't be the last time we talk Everybody Eats. I'm sure about that. Joe, are the shirts for sale yet? We get the Everybody Eats shirts.
Herdmentalityshop.com. I blew it. I should have worn it this week instead of last week,
All right. Hey, when we get back, guys, I want to get your predictions on James Cook, because the next show, we might know a little something about whether or not James Cook is going to appear at Bill's mandatory minicamp. So we're going to get our predictions in and also check in with an NFL great that passed away. I want to get a quick question to Joe and Jerry about Jim Marshall and how he'll be remembered, and all-time great players like him of his ilk. It's coming up on the Bill Squad Show. OTAs wrapping up, and the next step is going to be mandatory minicamp. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, and Jerry Ostrowski here on the Bill Squad Show. We might as well get into predictions before it happens, right? Will James, two parts. Will James Cook show up? And then if yes, what will he say? Will he work out? Will he be a full participant? What's your prediction for mandatory minicamp, how James Cook and his camp handles the potential escalation of the situation?
Joe?
Oh, man, I could talk myself into a lot of stuff here.
I'll go first if you want.
Yeah, you go first.
I think he shows up and it's business as usual. I think the Bills are pretty firm on this, and I think he might know that. And I think he'll show up. I don't think it'll be a hold in. I know the fines can be waived, so that'd just be my gut feel. Throughout this process, people have reported he'll be there this season. There's been no mention of it yet, and I know it's just minicamp, but I think he'll be there.
I think he'll be there because of two things. One, he is under contract. This isn't like a holdout where you don't have a contract. He's got a contract. He knows he's locked up for a year. So why go ahead and blow it and give a bunch of money back to the franchise in fines? The other thing is this: if he shows up, he's got the ultimate answer, right? When everybody questions him, well, where were you? Hey, man, it was mandatory. I don't understand why you're getting on me. It's not mandatory. It was voluntary. So why are you getting on me? I was just following what it is, and now I'm here because it's mandatory. So he's got an easy answer to get him out of it, but I think he'll be there as well.
The reason I will agree that he'll be there is because these tactics have not been used on Brandon Beane, but we know that the tactic of showing up and doing your job has led to a number of extensions, and he's the one guy that hasn't gotten it done. And I think there's obviously the running back layer that matters in the conversation, and also what James Cook is asking for versus what I believe is a reasonable amount. But I think this ultimately comes down to, at some point, James Cook has to realize what actually is going to lead to an extension. And what's going to lead to an extension is showing up, being accountable, doing your work, delivering. It's not being there. That's never gotten one single player an extension under Brandon Beane. And so I think that probably at some point becomes clear to James Cook. And like kind of what we talked about the other day, it's like at some point he's got to be a little bothered that Ray Davis in his second season's getting all these reps. And even Joe Brady said that in his media availability this week. He said, when somebody's not here, he goes, I love Jimbo, but when somebody's not here, it's a great opportunity for those who are. And then that led to a lot of questions about Ray Davis. So I think James has got to be there.
Well, let me ask you this to kind of go back into a little bit of our last segment, fellas. Is everybody eats not a wide receiver topic? Is it a Buffalo Bills skill position topic? And does everybody eats extend to the running backs and the tight ends as well, considering the money we pay the quarterback and the money we're going to have to pay the offensive line to keep them intact? Is everybody eats not a wide receiver theory, but a Buffalo Bills skill position theory? I'll take your answers off the air.
I just watched James Cook play in a Week 18 meaningless game against the New England Patriots to get his 21 yards to get 1,000 for the season.
Right.
Come on. I mean, like, and I know that was probably a team decision. Like, they went through it and this is important to him. I get that. But it matters to some extent. I listened to Keon Coleman on the Carmelo Anthony podcast talk about before the injury, he thought he was on track for 1,000 yards. They're thinking about this stuff. They want their numbers. They know what it leads to. I think that from a team perspective, yeah, that is the philosophy that they want everyone to have, and I think everyone benefits. The team benefits that, but what this doesn't benefit is contracts.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I was saying it's a team concept,
yes,
not a player,
100%.
Not a player concept.
100%.
The thing I wonder about with Cook here, the most famous running back holdout is Le'Veon Bell. Is that the biggest one, right? Le'Veon Bell misses a full season. He had been franchise tagged for $12 million, and then they tried to franchise tag him again, and he never signed it, and he sat out the year, and they just let him walk, and he went to the Jets, and he got his big contract, and it was never really heard from again to any great degree. I wonder how that plays into this formula, because wouldn't you put the Bills franchise tagging James Cook at a 0% chance?
Zero. Yeah.
Zero.
Right.
They're the cap, the spot they're in, the franchise tag next year, let's say it's $13 million. It's a $13 million cap hit. They're just not going to do that. They'd be much more likely to sign him for 2 years and 26 and move cap around and save money. So that to me actually brings Cook. I know it leaves him unprotected because he doesn't have a contract, but it also means he's closer to being free, an actual free agent. You know, you're not going to sit there and place the tag and say, nope, you're not going to get that big $40 million deal because we say so. That's not in the cards. And I feel like that might help push Cook to, all right, go produce. And whenever your time is coming, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel when you're going to get that contract from the Bills or from somebody else.
Is there a layer to this James Cook conversation as we've explored it from every angle? I think this is the one that maybe we haven't gotten to. Is it worth asking the question, does James Cook actually want to sign a long-term extension in Buffalo? Or is $15 million the amount of money that he says, you know what? Yeah, I'll live in Western New York where there's not much to do and it's cold. As a guy who grew up in Miami Gardens, Florida, like maybe there's a chance that's not where he wants to play his professional football. But if you pay me like Derrick Henry, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. I think it's worth asking the question because these are real people, right? It's not just, not everybody wants to, for some people it really fits. And guys love to be in Buffalo and they love what's established there and how they're treated and all that stuff. That might not be true for everybody. And maybe that's not true for James Cook, but for $15 million, yeah, I'll do the thing.
That's exactly. Joe's been looking on my test. That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you're going to try to sell a guy to take less money to stay in Buffalo. Well, what am I getting from that? I mean, do we really think, how does this season go? Do I think we can win a Super Bowl here? Does that even matter to James Cook? Does a world title matter to him? Or is it all about how much money I make? And I think that is a great point. And I think somebody, maybe Jeremy, you should do that. Maybe that should be your question to ask James Cook when he shows up. Do you really want to be here? And what else could happen? Right?
Yeah. Hey, I think it's you're saying like it's the buy now price, right? On the auction, like $50 million. You want me to say like, right. Yes, I'll, yeah.
But when you talk about franchise tag, I mean, I think the guys that could possibly get the tag next, if they ever were to use it, would be either McGovern or Torrance in another year. Maybe those guys get it, although Torrance guard numbers are through the roof. But, maybe one of those guys get it. But no, I don't see him losing it on James Cook.
You can comment. We'll get a comment and question segment coming up in a minute. Before we get to that, I got a picture, Jerry. I feel like it's just for you. I feel like you'll just appreciate what I've got here. I want to remember Jim Marshall for a moment. So Jim Marshall is an NFL great who just passed away. There's the picture I got just for you, Jerry. Look at that. Like that's football in the 60s, covered in mud, shirt, jersey all ripped up. He's a former NFL Ironman, 270 consecutive starts, 4 Super Bowls, 14 consecutive years team captain with the Minnesota Vikings, just passed away. He is best known for one of the biggest blunders in NFL history, scooping up a fumble, running the wrong way, and then throwing the ball in the stands to celebrate the touchdown, and it ends up being a safety, which I feel like every young football fan watching blooper videos growing up, like you see the guy that ran the wrong way. So, his career was so much more than that, but I wondered if we could ask you, Jerry, about the biggest mistake, biggest brain fart gaffe on the field you ever made or a teammate might have made along the way at any point?
I think the biggest mistake, the funniest thing that offensive linemen do anyway, as far as mistakes go, in games, I never had like a huge type mistake like that. Obviously there's missed assignments and things that in the meeting room are much worse than running a touchdown the other way. But the funniest thing that you always see happen with offensive linemen is when they run we're running a gap scheme and we're gonna pull the guard and the tackle, we're gonna pull the guard, but the other guard messes it up and thinks he's pulling, and both linemen pull at the same time. And as Karl Mock used to call it, 2 trains passing in the night, right? They end up running into each other. The funniest one I've ever seen, it was a counter. So GT pull, guard that's supposed to be blocking down pulls, the 2 guards running each other. The tackle's actually nimble enough to get around those 2 clowns running into each other, and ends up being a positive play. And the offensive line coach is like, can you imagine the mental strife that whole stupid play put on the linebackers? if you're reading through the guards and you see both guards pull, run at each other, plus the tackle goes, he goes, if we can figure out a way to get those two knuckleheads and miss each other, this might be something new to do. But it puts a lot of strife and strain on linebackers trying to figure out what's going on. But, yeah, that's the biggest thing is when you see guards and guys pulling at the same time and running into each other behind the center. It's pretty hilarious.
How about I'm thinking about what's the play that it didn't count as a touchdown. The Dolphins lineman that picked up that fumble and then jumped and dove and he broke the plane.
Rob Hunt, yeah.
Right.
I was at that game. It was Baltimore Thursday night. I was in South
Wow.
Florida for it. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
But, it's funny. You talked about Jim Marshall and the Iron Man. I think that you don't see guys like that anymore because those guys, when they played, they went to training camp. They did their training camp. That was the inception of 2-a-days and 3-a-days. They did the season, and then when the day of the season was over, I remember the great Elijah Pitts, the late Elijah Pitts, who played for the Green Bay Packers, was Thurman's coach at the Buffalo Bills as our running back coach. And Eli was an amazing dude. He's like, man, when we were done the season, the next morning, I was walking to the box factory for my job. Like there was none of this. We're going to train 365 days a year and we're going to, do 1 million reps in the off season. Those guys, when they were done the season, they went to work and then they worked until training camp started, and training camp was used to get them in shape. That's why they had the 2-a-days back then, because those guys were all working. So they didn't take I personally believe that the body can only do so many reps. And a lot of this strength training is great. And it creates these just unbelievably, powerful ballistic type athletes. But to me, that's what's shortening careers. I mean, it's 365 now. I mean, you never get a break. And those guys, they could play forever because in the offseason, they weren't hammering weights or anything. They were working their jobs, man. They were raising their families and, being normal dudes. So it's cool. That picture was awesome. Yeah. I actually got to talk to the great Art Donovan for a while one time, and you want to talk about stories. The best story Art Donovan ever told was playing the game in Baltimore Municipal Stadium after the Barnum and Bailey Circus was there, and they never cleaned up after the elephants on the field. And, flicking elephant up on the offensive lineman and stuff before the plays. It was a pretty funny story.
That's tough. That's another one of those you don't know what goes on down there kind of stories, right? I mean,
exactly. Art was beautiful. If you ever have a chance, he has a book called Fatso. You should read it. It's nuts. It's funny.
It's one of the reasons I think people really love to see, big man touchdowns, and guy gets the Sam Adams against the Patriots in 2001's an all-time play in Bills history, just because those guys, I think people obviously respect how much work they put in. Finally, he's got the ball. He makes something happen, big man touchdowns, always a highlight. All right, we'll get a break in, and when we return, we'll get to your comments and your questions. A couple things before we close things out. It's the Bill Squad Show. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, and Jerry Ostrowski here on the Buffalo Bills. Sorry, on the Locked On Bills channel here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, have some comments to get to. You can always follow us on YouTube. We do live Mondays and Thursdays. We're in the Locked On Bills podcast channel as well. So you can stream us. You can watch it later. You can comment. We see comments, people watch on their own schedule. You see their comments 8 hours later. It's kind of fun. So at any point you want to just, drop something, drop us a line, you can. So a couple things here. I'm going to put this one up here from Cognitive Dissonance. Is anyone else deeply annoyed with Diggs signing in New England? The reason I'm putting this up is we could talk about that. But beyond that, I think Mr. Joe Marino deserves a bit of a hat tip for last show saying this Diggs thing doesn't matter. It was 1 day later from the boat stuff. He's running drills at camp, and it was over. It's over. They were going to cut him for 5 minutes. They're not going to cut him. He's fine. He's there. So, Joe, hat tip to you. You saw through it all better than
power
anybody.
of video. It's video makes everything a little bit worse, but I bet you Stephon Diggs was one of many NFL players that was on a yacht over Memorial Day weekend doing things that probably pretty happy they didn't get out on video.
I wouldn't say I'm annoyed him being with New England. I'm eager to see how it goes, but it's definitely already, creating some headlines.
I'm kind of happy he's in New England. I know how the story ends. I know how it ended in Minnesota. I know how it ended in Buffalo, and hopefully it ends there the same way. So, I'm just waiting for the demise to happen.
Next up, Blake writes in, who's getting the most targets this year? Elijah Moore, Josh Palmer, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir. He put Coleman in there twice, so maybe Coleman gets in there twice. Joe, you'd mentioned that your target distribution projections had created a lot of buzz. Who do you have as getting the most targets? I feel like Shakir's the favorite.
Yeah, I think it's Shakir. And, I mean, he was the leading target getter last year. He was the leading target getter under Joe Brady when he took over as the offensive coordinator. So you have a good history to point to, but I think the most important thing is he's got the best chemistry with Josh Allen. He's got the most trust from Josh Allen. That's where Josh is going to want to go with the football. And so I think it'll be Shakir, and I think you can count on the low end 80 targets, on the high end 100, 110.
I think you got to look at it as who's getting the most targets over 20, 25 yards plus.
It won't be Shakir.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know is who, because the guy that gets the most targets and most plays over 20 yards is the guy who's making the bigger plays, and which is an indicator of our downfield passing game. So I think it's a no-brainer. It's Shakir for most targets, but who's getting the most over 20 plus? That'll be what's interesting to see.
John writes in, who would you choose as a wide receiver one if you could? I mean, Jamar Chase is too easy here, right? Like,
we have the entire NFL.
Yeah, I think that's what he means. Like, who would you choose? A.J. Brown?
Oh, Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase would be one of those two. I think they're fundamentally different players. Is it crazy? I think Justin Jefferson's a more complete receiver than Jamar Chase, and that's no slight on Jamar Chase. I think he's 1B. I just think maybe the production even favors Chase. I just think Jefferson's a little bit more overall complete, where I think Jamar Chase's superpower is that he can out-physical everybody, and I think Justin Jefferson's got a little bit more to his game, so I'll go with him.
I'd probably pick Worthy from Kansas City. No,
I'm
just kidding.
Get him out.
Get him out. I'm just kidding. No, Justin Jefferson is who I would pick. I think he's complete. I love LSU players anyway, man. Them dudes are dogs. So I like Jefferson.
Have a couple on James Cook here. I like this one from Brandon, who writes in, if Buffalo didn't work out a new deal with Cook, what number would you say a team would be willing to pay him if the Bills don't meet his demands? Can you see another team giving him $15 million plus? Not nope. AAV, no. I could see him getting something like 3 years, 32, like $10 million a year neighborhood, maybe. But his value to the Bills, if you're going to tell me his value is the most to the Bills, I might believe that. I might agree with that. I don't think he's getting 15 anywhere.
The teams that I would think would be willing to do it, I think about Chicago and Ben Johnson wanting his Jahmyr Gibbs. I think about Dallas, maybe. Washington as a team that has a quarterback on a rookie deal. Who else is out there? Who's going to do it?
I think if someone's out there gives him $15 million a year, it's because they're willing to overpay a little bit to get what they think is the final piece to get them over the top. If they feel they have to spend a little bit more, it's not going to be because, hey, they think that you deserve $15 million. I think that I think it was Joe that said 12.5 is kind of that area. I think that's a good number. But if someone gives them 15, I think it's because they're going to say, hey, I'm willing to give a little bit more to get this guy because I think he's going to get us to the show. So that's what I think. If he does get it, that's why.
Eric on Cook. If Cook leaves, does Ray Davis become RB1, or they bring in someone to take 50% of the snaps? I'll ask it this way: if Cook leaves, he signs, is running back a top need in the draft, or are you comfortable with Ray Davis? Are you ready for Brandon Beane to say, why are we talking running back? We have a good running back. Would you trust Davis to go into a year as RB1?
I'm a little more nervous about that because I don't think Ray Davis, while he's a good back, I don't think he's the zone running back that Cooks is. So if we're going to bring in somebody to complement this group, I want a guy that runs inside zone or outside zone very, very well. That's what makes Cook so great, is that he's got the ability to be patient and hop back behind stuff and all that, runs the zone very well. He's very patient. And I see Davis as more of a slasher, more of a counter, more of a gap scheme type back, but he does and he also catches the ball well. I would think anyway, hopefully, I'll tell you who's got me intrigued. And I know Joe, I think a perfect compliment would be like a Scattaboo. I mean, you want to talk about running the zone. Scattaboo can run the zone. Now, granted, he's not going to leave anybody. And I'm not saying he's James Cook. What was your thoughts on Scattaboo coming out? Did you have a very I mean, I know he's a 4th round, 5th round guy. I mean, it's kind of an acquired taste, but I like him. I like his attitude. I like what he does, especially running the zone.
I think he's a likable football player. I think he's very similar to Ray Davis in terms of skill set overall. What he wouldn't give is the explosive play.
Right.
And that's what I think is going to be most important if the Bills have life after James Cook, is making sure that you complement Ray Davis with somebody that can hit the home run, which I think is the best thing James Cook does for this team. So I do think you make a great call out. The zone game, James Cook has really grown in that capacity. And for Ray Davis, I would say it's probably a weakness of his is how he negotiates zone runs and how he attacks the line of scrimmage and creates, second level movement to give himself creases. Like, he's got work to do there. And there's a drop off. So I think they should prioritize an early investment in a running back, but the benefit there is you reset the money. And I think that's a good plan for this Bills team.
John writes in, is it unreasonable to see Keon having the most touchdowns on the team? I don't think so at all. I mean, last year was Mac Hollins, and Keon got end zone targets. He's the garbage collector down there in the red zone. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he led the team in touchdown receptions.
I was going to say that if you look at his skill set, he's built for that. I mean, that's what he's built for. Red zone, jump ball, contested catches. So no, it wouldn't shock me.
Receiving touchdowns for sure. I think he'll get that done.
And then I have just created a question I'd like to ask you guys. Which is a better scenario? Okay. Is it that James Cook signs for $12 million per year, or he leaves and they use their 2nd round pick on a new running back? Which is the better scenario?
I'd love to reset the money at running back and then worry about paying McGovern and Torrance and whatever young players are coming through. So yeah, if you give me a 2nd round running back that I like, I think I would enjoy this. I think I'd choose that.
I agree. I think the signings up front are directly proportional to what the guys behind them with the football do. I think it's always going to take precedent with me. Much as I love Cook, I like his experience. He would have 4 to 5 years on him. You can reset the money with a guy that's coming out of college that doesn't have as much wear and tear. I would do that. I would probably go ahead and I don't know if I'd use the 2nd round pick on a running back, but I would definitely do that as far as letting him leave. I mean, is this do I have to take the 2nd round pick?
That's why if it was he leaves or goes, that's one thing, because this kind of scenario makes it tough for me. The Bills have shown that they will use 3rds and 4ths and with Cook, the last pick of the 2nd round, on running back. So if you make it a 2nd round pick, you're basically redrafting James Cook because he was the last pick of the 2nd round, right? They traded on twice and drafted him.
It depends, Jeremy. We're not going to reach. We're going to take the best player available on the board. So if with the 2nd round pick that I have, if a running back that is worthy of that spot is available, I would probably take him. But
it's funny how that'll work out.
Yeah. The thing that I worry about here, and this gets to a conversation maybe we have, another time or next year pre-draft, but it's not even about how I don't value the position, but if James Cook can be a 2nd round pick and play as well as he does, let's say he has another amazing year and then they let him walk, I would have probably a fundamental problem with 2nd round running backs, because are you capping the ceiling of your 2nd round pick as he's on your team for 4 years and then you don't have interest in bringing him back? Because those are spots where you can get Osiris Torrance, who are you going to sign him for longer term, right? Like, you have to use your draft picks as chips. And if the Chiefs get Chris Jones in the 2nd round, he's there for a lifetime. And if you draft a running back and you're a team that's always going to reset that, then you're capping the ceiling of your 2nd round pick. And I don't like that. So that's why, like, if I pay 12, at least I get to keep my 2nd round pick in this scenario. That's kind of why I put it out there to you guys. Like, this makes it a little more tough. If you're going to lock in, they're going to use the 2nd to replace him.
Well, think of it this way, and I don't want to lock anything in as far as forcing me to take a running back in the 2nd round, but think of it this way. If Ray Davis, and we all know how Ty Johnson, they love him in the passing game and on 3rd down, if Davis produces and comes along, what's to say that you don't go ahead and let Cook go, but then you can go out and say there's another kind of equivalent type dude, an older, maybe a little bit veteran, that you can bring in for less money to give you similar production, maybe close to, that's a zone running type back, and not have to burn a draft pick, but bring a vet in like they've done recently. They've done it many, many times over the last 3 to 4 years. Does Davis produce? Does Johnson, do they elevate to where now we're really happy with them? Let's bring in a complementary piece that has a little bit of experience, a veteran that we're paying 8, 9, something to not quite as much, but we get similar production.
All right. Before we go, one more comment. Mighty Horse wrote in that my shirt works. Each week, Mighty Horse is commenting on the shirt that I wear because I've got a lot of golf polos, and he likes the Bill shirt. So I'm just going to give myself that little shout out. Thanks to Mighty Horse, who's been checking in on my shirts.
It's a big. I've seen that. It's been a topic. Jeremy's attire, whether or not they got the right hat on. So
yeah,
people are dialed in on the details, right, Jerry?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Glad they're asking about your attire. They don't worry about mine.
All right. We'll close out when we come back next week. Mandatory minicamp. We'll have, I guess keep those James Cook takes nice and warm because we'll have to dust those off depending on whether or not things get escalated or maybe it's all put to bed next week at Mandatory Minicamp. Thanks for tuning in on the stream. Thanks for listening on the channel as well. Join us live Mondays and Thursdays on YouTube. It's the Bill Squad Show. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, and Jerry Ostrowski. Thanks again, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.